Conversation with the Candidate continues.
Welcome back to Conversation with the Candidate and our candidate, former Colorado Governor John Hickenlooper. We have our studio audience, our town hall of New Hampshire voters here, and we're going to get things started with questions for the former governor right away, starting with George Matthews from Nashua.
Hi, Governor.
Hi, George.
What specific plan do you have to beat the president?
The question of the day. Well, the first thing I'll say is that defeating Donald Trump, in my opinion, is absolutely essential, but it is not sufficient. Because in the end, you know, he's a symptom of this, what I call the crisis of division, I think is affecting the whole country. So I'll just put that as a context. But I think that if you look at how we're going to beat Donald Trump, we're going to have to win back Michigan and Wisconsin and Ohio and Pennsylvania, North Carolina and Florida. And I look at this, I'm a small business, a small business person, an entrepreneur. I was out of work for 2 years. I reinvented myself. I created a business. I created 1,000 jobs. But I also then had the experience as a mayor and a governor to understand how government works at the different levels and how dysfunctional it's become in Washington. And I think people in Michigan and Wisconsin and these Midwestern states, they're going to want to see someone who understands business and jobs. We've been working in Colorado to create apprenticeship programs and skills-based training in our community colleges to make sure that kids of all ages have a chance to learn the skills that are going to open the door for them to get much better jobs in this new economy. And President Trump has done nothing but turn his back on the people that helped elect him. And I think my job is to go out there and offer real examples of here's what a future can look like when you begin to prepare people and give them the chance to lift themselves up, which he hasn't done, right? I mean, you look at, I was in Iowa a couple weeks ago, and they say that a soybean farmer in Iowa will have to have 8 good years just to get back to where they were 2 years ago.
George, thank you very much for the question.
Thank you.
And there you go. And now the next question will come from Lynn Healy.
Welcome to New Hampshire.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn.
The World Happiness Report was recently released, and it indicated that Americans are not happy in spite of all the things that we have going for us. What can you do to reignite the American spirit for the common good?
Thank you, Lynn. I think that's a question for people of all ages and in all parts of the country. More even than the lack of happiness that we see again and again in all parts of the country. People, Gallup is doing a poll now where they look at, do you think you're going to be better off in 5 years than you are today? And really, there's been a major inflection. People no longer feel that confidence that the future is going to be better. So optimism obviously starts at the top. And as an entrepreneur, you cannot be an entrepreneur without being an optimist. And part of that is a belief that if you work hard enough and you persevere, you can overcome almost anything. I mean, my mother was widowed twice before she was 40 years old. So she had 2 children with her first husband who died at the end of World War II, and then married my dad and had 2 kids with him, and he died just when I turned 8. And my mother wouldn't let us feel sorry for ourselves, and she was constantly pushing us. Was it drama? Was it sports? Was it academics? Find something that will engage you, and then invest yourself and build the relationships with people around you. In terms of the United States, creating that optimism, part of it is people have to believe in their future. And I think this notion that we have created an economic system where, in the old days, the middle class would get security and opportunity from our economic system, and poor people would have an opportunity to grab a hold of the economic ladder and pull themselves up. And most people don't believe that now. And in fact, it's not true anymore. 75 to 80% of our American families are having a hard time balancing their budget at the end of the month. I think we have to begin to change what American capitalism looks like. And for the last 30 or 40 years, we've been giving a little tax break here, a little cut here, basically doing everything to help businesses, especially large businesses, be more successful, more profits for their shareholders. But somehow that hasn't passed down to their employees and their stakeholders, their communities. And I think that there are ways we can, A, help people start businesses, and for 20 years now, there have been a lower number each year of people starting businesses. And that's where job creation starts. That's where optimism springs forward. People feel that in too many industries, there are just a few giant companies that dominate that industry, and would-be entrepreneurs aren't willing to take the risk to start their business. In too many occasions, people feel there's too much red tape and just paperwork to fill out, and these would-be entrepreneurs are usually pretty successful employees somewhere else. They stay there. We need to get more startups, more businesses, and as we begin to create more jobs, make sure everybody has a chance to be part of that economic success. That should be our single highest priority. I think we should look at taking our community colleges. What a resource. We have them all over the country. They can provide the skills that kids of all ages need, right, to engage in this new economy. We have, again and again and again, we see that people feel the economy's left them behind, that they can't keep up with it. Of course they can keep up with it if we give them that chance. And I have, in every community college I've talked to around the country, they have great relationships with the business community. The business community would love to support them if they can get workers with the right skills. So I think we can scale and say, all right, we're going to increase and expand the capacity of our community colleges by 10 times. And we won't have to raise taxes to do that. We'll work in partnership with the business community and make sure that every single person in this country has an opportunity to learn the skills and be part of that new economy. The last thing I'll just throw in quickly is, in terms of our rural community, in Colorado, we placed an emphasis on making sure we didn't leave behind any part of the state. When I got elected, we were 40th in job creation. For the last 2 years, U.S. News and World Report has ranked us the #1 economy in America. But we also helped bring along the rural economy as well. So by the end of 2020, we will have high-speed internet, we'll have broadband in every single city and town in Colorado, right? Because that's the basic ante that allows us to help those rural parts of the state succeed. In Colorado, we started a thing called Jumpstart Colorado. And it means if an entrepreneur starts a business in a rural part of the state, they don't pay any tax of any kind to the state of Colorado for 5 years, nor do their employees pay any tax of any kind for the first 5 years. I mean, those kinds of things, as we get the economy going again, we have to make sure that we don't leave parts of this country behind. This is one country, united we stand and divided we fall.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. We have a social media question coming in from Greg Zarnecki. He asks, do you believe we need law enforcement reform nationwide? If so, what change would be necessary to achieve?
So I dealt with this when I first became mayor. I ran for mayor in 2003, and I'd never run for student council. I'd never run for class president. I went out there and I said I wouldn't do any negative ads. I never have done a negative ad. I never will do a negative ad. I made a real focus on, we're going to do things the right way. And then right after I got elected, 2 weeks before I was going to be inaugurated, a 15-year-old African-American boy named Paul Childs was shot and killed by the police in his own living room. He was walking around. He was, I think, had some developmental disabilities, but he was walking around holding a knife straight up. And his mom just told her daughter, Paul Childs' sister, call the police, get them to come take that knife away from Paul. Well, the police came, emptied the house out, commanded him to drop the knife for three times, and then they shot him dead in his own living room. We began an effort around reforming our police system in Denver. This is 10 years before Ferguson. We created CIT training for every police officer. That's crisis intervention training. It allows police officers to recognize someone from a different culture, someone's is having a mental health issue. We made sure that we had beanbags, shotguns, and tasers, non-lethal tools available for the police officers. We also created the Civilian Oversight Commission to look at all the patterns of police misconduct and behavior. Were they stopping and frisking African Americans or Latinos more than other people, which it turns out they were. And we created an Office of the Independent Monitor to be able to investigate issues around police misconduct outside the mayor's office, outside the city government, so that they could get accurate information about those police officers that were, behaving in an egregious way. And we did this all in partnership with what we have in Denver is the Black Ministerial Alliance. There were 35 pastors and reverends, and they for 2 years became my partners as we created this system to make sure that we reformed our police department. Part of it was changing our discipline matrix so that police officers, instead of getting a slap on the wrist, could really be held accountable. As a country, I think the federal government, the Justice Department has to investigate those places where the police department isn't getting that kind of support, but it should also lay out that template that we created in Colorado that allows our community to have a real voice in judging and assessing police misconduct. And then when you do have, most police officers are honest, hardworking people. They bring a lot of integrity to their job, but it only takes a few bad apples to really create disaster. The consequences for bad officers is so traumatic and so destructive to our communities. So I would argue that the federal government in the United States has a real responsibility to go out and help communities reform their police departments.
Our next question comes from Paul Doscher of Where.
Thank you for being here, Governor. Tell us what you would do specifically to address climate change.
Sure, thank you. And that's the question, not just in New Hampshire, it's a question that's at the top of the list everywhere. And I've got a master's in geology. I think one of my interns told me that I'm the first geologist ever elected a governor in the United States, which I'm not sure what that says. But I also think that I know for a fact that I'm the first brewer since Sam Adams in 1792 to get elected governor. As a geologist, I get it. And, science isn't perfect. They're telling us now in 12 years, the consequences of climate change could well be irreversible. It could be 8 years. So we have to make this the highest urgency that we possibly can. And in Colorado, we were the first state to actually get the environmentalists, the environmental community, to sit down with the oil and gas industry and negotiate methane regulations. Methane is 25 to 40 times more destructive to climate than carbon dioxide. And in these methane regulations, in the end, it was 14 months of negotiation. And let me tell you, the environmental community and the oil and gas people hate each other. A lot of history of stabbing each other in the back. It was a bit of a challenge to try and keep everybody in the room at certain times. But in the end, the oil and gas industry agreed to pay $60 million to implement these regulations. It's the equivalent of taking 320,000 automobiles a year off the roads. And now that's being rolled out as national policy in Canada. It should be national policy in the United States, which it was until President Trump came along. But it should also be a global policy because methane is so important. The other part of it is we're closing 2 coal plants, and for the first time in the history of the United States, we were able to streamline permitting, right? Make sure the public's voice was heard, but streamline the permitting so that as we close the 2 coal plants, we will replace that electrical generation with solar, with wind, and batteries. For the first time, no natural gas. So we will have solar and wind and batteries, and for the first time, the consumers' electric bills each month will go down. So now all of a sudden we transform the market to really becoming our partner. We also were able to get all 10 Western states to collaborate and create a 10-state framework by which we use some of the Volkswagen, the Volkswagen diesel scandal, all that settlement money, to create high-speed, rapid recharging centers for electric vehicles all over the West. So if you're driving from Denver up to Yellowstone Park, you don't have to drive around Wyoming. Even Wyoming agreed to participate. We've got to do all that and more. This has to be a sense of urgency that so far we haven't been able to convince the people of America to embrace, but we have to.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Next question comes from Carolyn Morrill.
Hi. In 2006, many Democrats supported the Secure Fence Act for border security. It was an 80-19 vote to do 700 miles. Why do you think having a barrier on the borders is now deemed immoral by some of those same Democrats?
I think the question now is that the border wall is perceived as a scapegoat for a lot of other issues. And the immigrants in this country, people here legally and illegally, have been demonized and told that they're all rapists or they're all criminals in some way. We've got an issue in terms of our immigration system. When I ran for re-election, I met a number of people that had small businesses, like commercial painters or sheetrockers, who'd been in business for 20 or more years, and they wouldn't pay people under the table, and their businesses went out of business because they did things the right way, right? That's not American. Other employers are paying people under the table. I think the first thing is we've got to make sure that nobody gets paid under the table, that we get a system of ID in place and a commitment from business and sufficient punishment to ensure that people get paid above the table. But we also aren't going to expel 11 or 12 million people that are here illegally. The last data I saw from the Department of Labor, we have 7.2 million jobs that are available, and many of them need certain skills that the potential employees don't have. But 7.2 million jobs that are there, we have 6.3 million unemployed people. In other words, we've got more jobs than people, and this notion that we're going to suddenly expel all these other folks that are doing jobs that we need for our economy is crazy. So my argument is, let's fix the immigration system once and for all. I mean, how do we, certainly in all across the country, we're having a hard time harvesting certain crops, apples and blueberries. They can't be harvested by machines, and yet we don't have people to do that work. Look at the electrical engineers that we bring the smartest electrical engineers in from India or from China, and once they get their PhD, we force them to leave. We don't want those hundreds and thousands of jobs that they might create in this country. What we should be doing is giving them an incentive so that they can stay if they start their business in rural America somewhere, right? So we make sure the economic opportunities are settled.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. And we have just a little bit of time. You can get your water there, Governor. Time for one quick question from me here. How do you ensure that the people who are in the process legally right now to immigrate to the United States or to gain citizenship don't get skipped by the 12 million who've come here illegally?
Well, I think that's one of the real questions of the system. When a system is this dysfunctional and this broken, I think it really is a reflection of how bad things have gotten in Washington, that those people that are playing by the rules often, they're not ignored, but they're not treated fairly. And in some cases, they are ignored. My priority would always be to make sure that you've got to play by the rules, and the people that are playing by the rules get the first priority. But again, I don't think we should talk about, putting 11 million or 12 million or 13 million people out of this country at a time when we don't have enough people to do the jobs we already have. And this economy, everyone says there's a recession coming. I think we should be, assuming and hoping and working to make sure the economy continues to grow, because that's how you're going to raise prices or raise wages, not raise prices. Whoops. That'll get me in trouble.
We're going to get you in more trouble here in the next 30 minutes. We're done for television right now.
Okay.
We want to encourage our television audience to hop over on their mobile app and online to join us for this conversation. Conversation will continue there. Next week, we'll have Congressman Tim Ryan on Conversation with the Candidate. But for now, thank you to former Governor John Hickenlooper, to you watching at home, and to our audience.